Hello, welcome, and thank you for choosing today's brief but hopefully informative workshop based around men's mental health. My name's Andy from Laura Burke Training Consultancy. I'm here today on behalf of Medway Council to deliver this workshop. I've worked in the field of mental health for over 4 years. I'm passionate about mental health, but particularly passionate about men's mental health. We're going to move on quite quickly and look at some of our objectives for today. So we're going to look at discovering the prevalence of mental health issues among men, understanding how societal norms and stereotypes about masculinity influence men's mental health, identify stress, anxiety, and depression in men, explore the various barriers men face when seeking mental health support, and learn effective coping strategies for managing mental health issues and building a support network. We're going to look at some facts and figures around men's mental health. 1 in 8 men in England suffer from a common mental health condition like depression, anxiety, or obsessive compulsive disorder at any given time. And that figure is from NHS Digital in 2014. So pre-pandemic, and I would probably expect those figures to be a little bit higher now. 3 times as many men as women die by suicide. Men aged 40 to 49 have the highest suicide rates in the UK. Men report lower levels of life satisfaction than women, and men are nearly 3 times as likely as women to become dependent on alcohol and 3 times as likely to report frequent drug use. So how do we feel about those figures? Quite shocking, no? I still look at stuff like this, even working in the industry today, and it does shock me. It is saddening that figures are so high among men, and mental health issues are so prevalent. And a lot of it is to do with the stigma around men's relationship with mental health, the stigma around seeking support, talking about it. I'll ask you to take a brief pause moment and just think about this and answer it to yourself. What does it mean to be masculine? So what does it mean to you? Because it doesn't matter what I think. It's all about what you think. What does it mean to you? Because everybody's answer will be different. And it doesn't mean you're right or you're wrong, or because you were raised a certain way, raised with certain values, raised without certain values. This will be a defining factor in what you think masculinity is, what you think a good man is, a good brother, a good father, a good partner, a good husband, a good son. Do societal expectations impact men? Do we think they do? I certainly do. But again, that's my opinion. Toxic masculinity. Traditional gender roles and stereotypes have shaped the expectations for men to be providers, protectors, and decision makers. Media influence also plays a part in shaping societal expectations of men. Would we all agree on that? I think we would. Toxic masculinity. So what is toxic masculinity? Well, it's toxic, obviously. Toxic masculinity is a bad idea of being a man, bad stereotypes. There are a couple of people quite prevalent in the media at the moment, one in particular, with clearly toxic ideas around masculinity, around what it is to be a man, how a man should behave in society, in a relationship, treat women in particular and other people. The idea of men being dominant and aggressive, having to be strong, having to be successful. Now, that's a complicated one to say, have to be successful, because your definition of successful might be incredibly different to mine. What is success? Well, some of these toxic figures in the media define success as Lamborghinis and Ferraris and private jets. Um, and this is becoming very prevalent for young men to see and engage with. And it's affecting their definition of masculinity, their definition of a man. And it's just adding to all those overall issues in men's mental health. Traditional gender roles. So this is a really interesting one. So a couple of years ago, I ran a group, a face-to-face group around men's mental health, and we had a group of older guys, probably mid 50s to late 50s to early 60s. Um, and we had some younger guys there as well. So we done an exercise where we split them into groups and we asked them, um, why is there a stigma around men's mental health? What is the stigma about? And the older generation's answer was very, very interesting, and it's one I speak about a lot. And that's why I'm bringing it up here today. Is because their answer was that in the 60s and 70s, we had the female sexual revolution. Some of you might remember that. Some of you might just have read about it in the history books. Um, and things changed for women. We burned bras. Women became equal members of society with the same rights as men. Women could go to work. Women didn't just have to be mothers and caregivers and housewives and homemakers. They could be anything they wanted to be, which is absolutely correct. And we're way, way further along than we were back then. Thank God. Uh, we are. We still have sexism and misogyny in society today, unfortunately. But nothing is ever perfect. But we are in a far better place. I think everybody would agree with that. A far better place than where we used to be. However, while we were doing all this for women, it didn't change for men. We didn't then say, oh, yeah, so things have changed. So it's changed for everybody. So I don't have to man up and get on with things. I can be emotional. I can be a stay at home father. I can be a single father. I can do a job that isn't necessarily a male dominated industry. No, that didn't change. I don't have to be the main provider. I don't have to be the man of the house, the head of the house, the head of the family. Society, that didn't change. All those expectations remained on men. That's what that particular group felt. And I just wonder if those watching today agree with that, because I certainly agree. And no one had ever put it that way to me before. So I definitely agree that that is certainly forms a huge part of the stigma around men speaking out, speaking up about their emotional and their mental health. Media influence. So obviously we spoke about certain figures in the media, but even if we look back at mainstream, um, there's some ads in the past, not for girls, the best a man can get, and just not necessarily bad or deliberately detrimental, but just extreme images of what masculinity, what a man should be, very conservative and traditional. And I think as a society, we've really struggled to move on. And I think that is affecting a lot of men, which shows in the figures that we've just looked at. Stress. Stress is the body's reaction to feeling threatened or under pressure. We usually feel stressed when we feel out of control in a situation or when demands placed on us feel too much. Continued stress can lead to a mental health problem, and experiencing a lot of stress over a long period of time can also lead to a feeling of physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion, often called burnout or emotional snapping. And stress affects everybody. Obviously, it's not just men, but there are certain stressors in a man's world that will be more prevalent than for females. So that pressure to succeed, that pressure to be the head of the family, the man of the household, this main breadwinner, or even sole provider, can cause the body to react to that high level of stress. Some symptoms of stress. So in the body, what do we feel? Headaches, stomach pain, muscle aches, skin irritations, fatigue, and nausea. And I'm sure most people listening here today will have experienced some of this at some stage when they've had high levels of stress in their life. And there is no linear plan to this. It will affect everybody differently because everybody's differently. In the mind, worrying, a lack of concentration, impaired memory, poor judgment, impaired speech. And again, as with all these, it isn't linear. It'll affect different people differently. Some people that impaired speech, maybe stuttering or really, really fast speak, can come at quite a low level. Others, it would have to be a very, very high level. Impaired memory, forgetting everything, which is making you more stressed. Short-term memory being really affected, putting something down, not knowing where it is, convinced you didn't do it. Our emotions, agitation, feeling unhappy, feeling overwhelmed or sad, restlessness, and isolation, feeling isolated, big one for men in particular. And then our behavior, eating and sleep changes, and that's one way or the other. So some people will overeat and sleep less, others will undereat and sleep more, some will overeat and sleep more, and so on. Every person is different. Using drugs or alcohol, which we saw the figures among men are quite high in dealing with these scenarios. Pacing, so that comes back to the emotion of restlessness, pacing up and down. Nail biting. I don't know how many nail biters we have on. I'm sure we've all done it. I've been guilty myself. And withdrawn. And that comes back to the emotion of isolation. So withdrawn. And that is the brain avoiding. Avoid, avoid, avoid. How long can I avoid this for before it goes away? And that doesn't mean you're silly or you're stupid or even you have a severe mental health condition. It's just the brain trying to keep you safe. Anxiety. Anxiety is a feeling of stress, panic, or fear that can affect your everyday life, physically and emotionally. Our programming is fight, flight, or freeze response. It can feel different for everybody, which is true of pretty much everything we say today. This isn't an exact science. We can't say, oh, yes, you have this, so you'll definitely have that, and then we'll do this, because it'll be a different journey for everybody. 29.9% of men reported high anxiety levels, and those are from the Office of National Statistics in 2023. Can anxiety be helpful? That's a question for you. Has anxiety ever helped you? I'll answer yes. Anxiety can be very helpful for me because it puts me on alert. And there are some scenarios where I need to be on alert. Over long periods of time, it's not good for anybody, extremely detrimental, mentally, emotionally, and physically. But can it be helpful? Yes, of course it can, because anxiety is the brain kicking in to keep you safe, high alert, panic mode. And what are some of the causes of anxiety? Well, that's going to be different for everybody. So that is really a question for you. You can have some of the examples we spoke about already. Money pressures, being a provider, new job, new girlfriend, maybe expecting a child, becoming a father, and sometimes just relationships with family, parents, siblings can all add high stress levels and anxiety levels. Symptoms of anxiety. So in the body, we might feel churning feeling in the stomach. I'm sure everybody has experienced that at some stage in their life, whether anxiety or not. It's not a nice feeling. What's the mind doing? It's feeling tense, nervous, or unable to relax. And some of the behavior might be fidgeting. Do we all know what fidgeting is? Yeah, can't stay easy. Body might feel lightheaded or dizzy because the mind is feeling a sense of dread. And some of the behavior might be, as we talked about, nail biting. Pins and needles in the body. Some people love them. Personally, I'm not a fan. Apparently, they can be quite nice in your feet. And what's the mind doing? Feels like the world is speeding up or slowing down. Can everybody imagine that? Anybody felt that before? And behavior irritable. The body might be restless. The mind might be feeling like other people can see that you are anxious. We all know that one, yeah? Feel like people are looking at you, like they know, no matter what it is, even if it's not something to do with that secret. Oh, I think they know. I think they know. Oh, do you see the way they looked at me? I think they know. Remember, it's you that knows. So it's your mindset that has changed. That's why you're feeling that way. Because you feel like that, you're designed to think they can see that. And some of the behavior might be tearful or emotional. Headaches and backaches, very, very common as well. The mind might be thinking bad things are going to happen. What's that called? Catastrophizing. I'm sure we've all done that at some stage in our life. Catastrophize. Small thing happens, you think about it 100 billion times till it's huge. Everyone else has forgotten about it, but for you, it's the most important thing in the universe. And that can cause a behavior of withdrawing from family and friends, particularly in men, that isolation, avoidance, faster breathing. The mind will be worrying about having a panic attack, which unfortunately a vicious cycle can cause a panic attack. And the behavior might be low productivity at work or college. So just cannot get things done, can't concentrate, cannot get on with it. Sleep difficulties, because the brain will be ruminating. And that is thinking the same thing over and over and over. It's very similar to catastrophizing. Although ruminating, you might not be making it bigger and bigger. Some of the behavior might be drugs or alcohol to self-medicate. Coping mechanism. It helps me sleep. Not particularly healthy. But at the same time, everybody will handle things differently. Faster heartbeat. And the brain might be feeling disconnected with the world around you. Some of the behaviors will be an inability to manage day-to-day tasks effectively. So this is at the quite severe end. And then needing the toilet more or less, which actually links nicely back up to the top of that churning feeling in the stomach. And at that stage, you might need more reassurance from others. You might just really need that support. Depression. Big word. Big word. Depression is a low mood that can last a long time or keeps returning, and it affects our everyday life. It affects 1 in 6 adults in the UK, which is a huge number. With the right support and treatment, you can make a full recovery. It's not permanent. Many people with depression also have symptoms of anxiety. Treatments include medication, talking therapy, or lifestyle changes. And we're going to look at some of the symptoms of depression. So we'll look at the psychological side, the physical side, and the social side for this. Continuous low mood or sadness. And the physical side of that could be moving or speaking more slowly than usual, and withdrawing from family or friends on the social side. Hopeless or helplessness. Changes in appetite or weight. And again, it will be different for everybody. Some people it'll be overeating, some people be under eating, but pretty much routine comes into a lot of this. A lot of our routines, sleep routines, eating routines, and then neglecting your hobbies or interests. And if you have felt depressed in the past, you will remember not remembering the things that gave you joy. So what the brain is not going to do is, if you wake up in a really bad mood, the brain is certainly not going to tell you all the good things that you do. It's not designed that way. The brain is not going to say, oh, we're in a bad mood today, so let's try and make it a good mood. So instead of listening to the radio, let's put on the telly and let's have a hot breakfast. Let's have some scrambled eggs instead of the usual cereal. Instead, the brain will block that and go, nah, it's a terrible day, terrible mood. And it's only going to get worse because I've decided. And it's just about recognizing that. And why is the brain doing that? Because the brain is designed to keep you safe, not make you happy. So from the brain's perspective, no, stay in bed. Could be danger out there. We've already decided it's bad. Could be danger out there. Stay in bed. Low self-esteem comes back to physical side of stomach upsets, stomach issues. Social side, having difficulties in home, work, or family life. Feeling tearful. Just overall emotional. Much more emotional a lot of the time. And that can cause aches and pains. Feeling irritable, a lack of energy. No motivation or interest in things. Or loss of libido, a huge one for men. And a huge stigma attached to that as well. Definitely. And that comes back to that toxic masculinity, doesn't it? What does a man do? Feeling anxious or worried can cause disturbed sleep. And then suicidal thoughts or thoughts of harming yourself. That's the big one, isn't it? That's the important one. That's the scary one. Oh, what's he going to say about that? And you know what? Something we don't talk about. It's normal. It is actually normal for our brain to go to that sometimes. It is scary. Of course it is. Where we would be really worried, or where it's very important to seek support, is if that becomes prevalent and more often. Because nobody needs to live like that. Nobody should have to live at that level. And there is support out there. But having maybe once thought, oh, I feel so low today. I've thought about it. That as scary and awful, absolutely awful for some people to feel that, as that is, it is actually quite natural and normal in the brain. What are the barriers for men seeking help? So another pause exercise. So take a moment and just have a think about that. That one's for you. What are the barriers? What are your barriers? So the barriers when seeking help. Societal expectations, as we spoke about. Traditional gender roles, we spoke about. A lack of self-awareness. Would we agree on that one? A lack of self-awareness, not being quite aware, just thinking it's a bad mood. Don't know a lot about mental health, haven't really looked at it, never had any issues with it. I just feel it's a bad mood. That's gone on for 4 months. Fear of judgment or shame, absolutely. A perceived loss of control, another big one for men. Control is a huge issue because of those gender roles, societal expectations. Inadequate services for men. Might feel there's not enough services, not the right service for you. Lack of a role model. So maybe you didn't have the perfect example of what a man should be growing up. Maybe this is all you know. Maybe your role model didn't believe in mental health, didn't think it was a real thing. Intervention. So we're going to look at some interventions now. Breaking the cycle. So sad mood leads to low energy. Avoidance of pleasurable activities and people, which leads to social isolation, which leads back to a sad mood. Make sense? Everybody experienced that at some stage. And even outside of the heading of mental health, we might have gone through this cycle on a much lower level in our lives. Behavioral activation. So we can plan regular activities, either daily or every few days, to elevate our mood and well-being. Easier said than done, but you got to start somewhere. So have a real think to yourself, what are those pleasurable things? Because it'd be different for everybody. Some people it might be going for a run. Me personally, worst idea in the world. Can't think of anything worse. Um, some people it might be doing a word search or jigsaw puzzle, Legos, um, or even just having a nice meal with your partner, your wife, sister, brother. Often we engage in activities when we already feel good and avoid them when we don't. And that's back to what I spoke about previously, is that the brain will deliberately block, won't say, oh, we really enjoyed that. Will literally completely block that out. Set small, achievable goals to gradually build a sense of accomplishment, helping to improve your overall mindset. So we all know what goal setting is, but they've got to be achievable. There's no point in setting a goal that I want to feel a million times better than I do today, tomorrow. And if I don't achieve that, I failed, because that's not going to help either. Small steps. Managing worries. The worry tree, something I use every single day of my life. We can spend hours a day worrying, but is it useful for us? The worry tree helps us to deal with worries that we have all the time. We can split our worries into two sections: real and not real, hypothetical and what if. Current problems relate to a real situation. If a current problem, we can create a plan to deal with that worry. If it's not a current problem, or it's hypothetical or not real, we have to just let it go. and just keep repeating that exercise. It becomes easier with time. Refocus your attention, speak to somebody, watch TV, play a game, watch a football match. Everybody's activity will be slightly different, but this worry tree is really, really important. Very, very useful tool because it's infinite. It's a cycle. So how many worries do you have in a day? If you've got high stress levels, anxiety levels, or even depression levels, those numbers are going to be high. So you're using a huge amount of your day thinking about them. I was told in the past, a good way of putting it, I don't know if these figures are exactly correct, but something like 90% of our worries in a day is stuff that's already happened. So we ruminate on stuff that's already happened, which leaves us room for 5% of our worries are stuff that's never going to happen, absolutely never, completely hypothetical. And then 5% of our time is spent on real worries. So 90% on the past, and then we only use 5% thinking about current and real worries and stuff that we can actually solve. Breathing exercises. I really like this one as well. So this is called the 4-4-2 technique. Some of you might recognize this formation if we have any football fans. And it's really, really simple. So we're going to do this as a demonstration, and then this can just be repeated. So exactly as it says on the tin, we breathe in for 4 seconds, we hold for 4 seconds, and we release for 2 seconds, and then we repeat. So we'll start. Make sense? In 4, hold 4, out 2. And these breathing techniques, again, are just a way of regulating, refocusing, and just helping the brain to just kick in and relax for even just a couple of seconds at first, just to gain that control. Silence your inner critic. That's an easy one, isn't it? Obviously, a lot easier said than done. When a negative thought appears, ask yourself, how could I think differently about this? What would somebody else say instead? Is there any evidence for this? And am I making an assumption rather than fact? So your inner critic feels, if your inner critic feels constant or hard to manage, there is support out there. So again, this looks like a very simple exercise, but it takes practice, like everything. It takes practice. So let's use an example. We'll use a negative thought. I'm starting a new job. I won't be good at it. So it was all positivity. When I went for the interview, was offered the job, took the job. We celebrated. Great. Now I start the job on Monday. Ah, you can't do this. You won't be able to do it. You'll be sacked in a month. You won't last your probation. Listening to that all day, I reckon that's tiring, no? So how could you think differently about this? Well, look, I got the job. Every single time. You can't, I got the job though. I got it. That's all I'm worried about right now. Got the job, gonna start the job. What would somebody else say? And hopefully you will have support of friends and family around you. So if you could think of what they would say, or even ask them, is there evidence for this? Usually there's not, but that's one I use a lot as well. I look for the evidence. So I have evidence to suggest that that is wrong because I smashed the interview and I've done a similar job before. Am I making an assumption rather than fact? Yeah. My negative brain is assuming that I will fail. That's not fact. Have I failed in the past? Yes, and learned from it. Should that happen, I can do that again. So, looking after your mental health, mindfulness, which we haven't looked at in detail today, and mindfulness is really important for mental health. But I've got a slightly different take on it. People have a connotation of mindfulness, a certain image that it has to be all breathing and nature walks, and obviously they are very, very helpful for a lot of people. But that's not everybody's version of mindfulness. Mindfulness is a task or activity in which you can focus solely on that task or activity, giving your brain, your mind a rest. For me, it's jigsaw puzzles, maybe a bit of Lego as well. Um, and those are two tasks where I can focus solely on them. I'm just doing what I'm doing. And it's quite relaxing because it just shuts that inner critic off, shuts the brain off, even just for a brief few minutes. Physical exercise, of course, is very important. Self care, looking after yourself. That might be taking time to yourself, having a, a relaxing bath or a nice meal, or even, as we said earlier, going for a run. Meditation, podcasts, one that I use a lot as well. I think podcasts are fantastic. It doesn't necessarily have to be well-being or mental health podcasts. It can be your chosen subject, reading or learning something new, talking to others, which again is back to that barrier for men. But if we can be more open and speak about it, it does make a huge difference. And then accessing support available to you. So there is lots of support out there. And then another pause question, pause moment. How do you look after yourself? Have a think about that. How do you look after yourself? Do you? Do you look after yourself? Would you say that you do? Maybe you do physically, don't mentally and emotionally. Maybe you do mentally and emotionally, don't physically. Maybe you do all of it together and you're doing really, really well right now, which is great. But what does that look like for you? So moving forward, we're going to look at some other supports. We have Samaritans, and they're 24-hour, 7 days a week, a listening service on 116 123. Your GP is obviously a forced part of call if you are feeling quite overwhelmed, quite stressed, or dealing with any of these issues, and they can refer you onto all the different services in the borough. You can search for My Local Mind on Google. There is a text service, Shout, and that is 85258. And that is not speaking to anybody, just simply a text back and forth, or your local EAP service. Remember, you're not alone. There are people that understand and can support you. And that is the key takeaway from today. You are not alone. Other men do feel this way. Other people feel this way. Men's mental health is incredibly, incredibly important. And as we saw from the statistics at the start, it's quite shocking, but you're not alone. There is support. We've come to the end of our workshop for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope there's lots you can take away. The very, very best of luck in your journey moving forward. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.